artillery officer. Armistead is ordered to Fort McHenry by the Secretary of War. Fort McHenry guards the entrance to the city of Baltimore. This is the key defense, and this is a vital role for Armistead to take command, and he loses no time in making defense preparations.
Those efforts now include turning to the people of Baltimore once again and asking them to make the supreme sacrifice for their city.
Think about the merchants of Baltimore. They were willing to sink their own ships, their livelihood, to protect the harbor of Baltimore. With these sunken hulks in the harbor, the British warships could not get any closer. They created a man-made reef that protected the rest of the city.
Armistead immediately orders 2 tiers of earthen shore batteries built and the mounting of 60 artillery pieces.
We are ready, except that we have no suitable ensign to display over the fort. And it is my desire to have a flag so large that the British will have no difficulty in seeing it from a distance.
Armistead sends an order for a large garrison flag and a smaller banner, known as a storm flag, to Mary Pickersgill, a maker of colors in Baltimore. The War Department pays her $574.44 for the 2 flags. The larger one, made of light wool bunting, measures 30 feet by 42 feet.
This was one very large flag. It took more than Mary Pickersgill to pull this off. There were 7 women living in that house with her, and her daughter Caroline relates this story in a letter she writes.
The flag is so very large. My mother was obliged to obtain permission from the proprietors of the Claggart's Brewery to spread in their malt house. And I remember seeing my mother down on the floor placing the stars. My mother worked many nights until 12 o'clock to complete it in the given time.
Soldiers hoist the new stars and stripes over Fort McHenry, capping the defensive preparations of Baltimore. As the largest flag in the country, it satisfies Major Armistead's order. The British will have no difficulty in seeing it. By 10 o'clock p.m. on September 10th, the city settles in, the entire area shrouded in an eerie silence. Everyone in Baltimore is aware of what is at stake. Now, the only thing they can do is wait. At noon, an alarm cannon blasts a warning to the city, shattering the quiet of a Sunday afternoon. Lookouts have sighted the British fleet off North Point. Some citizens respond in panic. Others rush to defend the city. The attack on Baltimore calls for a combined land and sea assault. By 7 a.m. the next morning, as 50 naval ships head up the Chesapeake, 4,000 British infantry troops and Royal Marines form at North Point and begin their march to Baltimore.
Marching in the hot, humid conditions of a Chesapeake Bay summer would be hard enough as it is, but marching in a woolen uniform with equipment, musket, 60 rounds of lead balls, haversack, knapsack, water canteen, was absolutely draining to the soldiers. A number of them died by the side of the road.
Undaunted, British Commander Major General Robert Ross, flush from his overwhelming victory at Bladensburg and the burning of Washington, presses on. When informed that militia make up the majority of American troops, he declares, "I don't care if it rains, militia." He will soon regret those words. This time, Ross will face off against American General John Stricker, a leader with a very different attitude than his colleagues in Washington. Stricker is determined that this time the militia won't run like sheep chased by dogs as they had outside the capital. Outnumbered, outgunned, and knowing that they are now facing the best army in the world, Stricker instead gives his men a different order: attack.
The militia are not prone to stand a bayonet attack in the daylight, let alone in the dark. So Stricker realizes he must act. He sends an expedition forward of riflemen, cavalrymen. They detect the British, and they begin to fire. The Battle of North Point is now joined.
As the fire intensifies, General Ross rides up to assess the situation. When he turns to rally the light infantry, one British lieutenant recalls what happens next.
He had scarcely entered the wood when an American rifleman singled him out. He fired the ball, true to its mark, pierced his side.
An anonymous sniper strikes down the commander of the British land forces. Ross falls from his horse, mortally wounded. Moments later, British fire fells the American rifleman. Growing weaker, Ross issues his last order. He yields command to Colonel Arthur Brooke, then dies. News of Ross's death quickly spreads through the ranks. Midshipman Robert Barrett expresses the shock shared by many in the British invasion force.
I can vouch that the lamented Major General Robert Ross was regarded by all ranks as a chivalrous hero whose humanity and bravery were equally conspicuous, and that his memory will never die in the regiments he so often led to victory.
The sniper's name has faded into history. With one shot, he would never know how he had changed the course of the War of 1812.
The tragic death of Ross affected the British Army in a very significant way. He was a known quantity. They knew what they could expect from him, and they trusted him. The British Army at this stage were in something of a quandary.
For the British, Major General Ross's death means more than just losing a leader. What was once an invincible juggernaut has experienced the first chink in its armor.
Imagine if Eisenhower had been shot the day before D-Day. That's what happened here. Ross was killed by a sniper, and the organization went into shambles. Men who really loved that general weren't so quick to turn to his replacement for leadership.
Had he lived, Ross might have emerged as the battle's most well-known figure. But now, that distinction will belong to a lawyer detained on an American truce vessel several miles away. His name, Francis Scott Key. The British invasion force continues its combined naval and land attack on Baltimore. Their battle plan suffers a significant early blow when a bullet from an American sniper kills General Robert Ross. The loss of their commander has sent shockwaves through the British Army. Ross is temporarily replaced by Colonel Arthur Brooke, an able but cautious leader. The British quickly realize that this will be a very different battle than the one just a few weeks earlier.
Brooke is in a quandary. He's against a much stronger American position than at Bladensburg. Stricker knows his business. Stricker anticipates Brooke's moves. He seems to read him like a book. As a result, every time the British columns move against the American position, Stricker dispatches troops in reserve to flesh out and harden up that defense.
To breach Stricker's defense, Brooke orders an artillery barrage. Bursts of projectiles and Congreve rockets cause confusion in the American ranks. Through clouds of musket smoke, British Lieutenant George Gleig remembers the fog of war.
Volley upon volley having been given, we were now advanced within less than 20 yards of the American line. Yet such was the denseness of the smoke that it was only when a passing breeze swept away the cloud for a moment that either force became visible to the other.